we touched on a little bit on Monday with CJ Stokes. I did want to update people because we did get a few asking, but CJ Stokes puts out on social media yesterday on Wednesday that he's going to stay with the team through the college football playoff. So an interesting schedule for him in the next several weeks, because that could include the trip to the Rose Bowl, which it sounds like he's going to, potentially down to Houston for the national championship game. But also, is he going to take visits? Obviously in contact with different schools. I saw Indiana offered him. But I think that's a good call, because it's not his fault that this college football calendar is so screwed up where you have to enter the portal before your season's over. So they're in the middle of a successful season. CJ Stokes has certainly contributed, whether it's, behind the scenes at practice, and, obviously played in 2 games as well this year. But your thoughts on that? Alan Bowman did it last year. He stayed on, and that was, I think, a good move as well. But maybe a few years ago, Jim Harbaugh wouldn't have allowed this. That's just a guess from me. But I think he's, changing with the times, and so are people around college football.
Yeah, the calendar is super screwy. And I know it has a lot to do with, getting guys enrolled, getting guys in before the winter semester starts or whatever it is. But, to have guys, and it's screwy with coaches too. I mean, you have coaches that will wind up taking jobs, or coordinators that will take head coaching jobs. But, we've seen that before with Dan Lanning at Georgia a couple of years ago. He stayed through the college football playoff. So it is screwy, but I will give a guy like Stokes, and if any other guys, there might be guys that plan to transfer that just haven't put it out there yet, because I think that's probably how the numbers.
Matt Hibner, I think, is in that group. Yeah,
I think so too. And so not all those guys are going to make announcements and whatnot, but I credit guys for not just cutting and running. I could think of at least a couple of Michigan players from last year that did that didn't stick it out. But again, I think I blame that more on the calendar than anything else. You just look at Stokes in general. That was a guy where we thought he was going to be in that mix for the third running back job. We suspected that Kalel Mullings was the guy, but there was still competition there. And then you look ahead to next year. Obviously, it's clearly Kalel Mullings, and
unless Donovan
Blake Corum will be gone. Donovan Edwards may or may not be back. You've got Jordan Marshall coming in. You've got some good freshmen. Redding was just kind of on the wall. So I don't blame a guy for, again, it's just when you have good players, we've talked about this a number of times on here. When you have a lot of good players in to compete, guys are going to wind up going elsewhere because they want to play ultimately too. So yeah, the calendar's a little screwy. We'll see who else winds up in there. There's going to be a lot of turnover. I think that this roster next year will be able to maintain most of its star power one way or another, but yeah, obviously those guys on the margins, I think we're going to start seeing some movement there. Maybe even I thought maybe we'd see a little bit more this week, but maybe next week is the time, right before Christmas, right before the holiday, right before, you start making your plans to travel to the Rose Bowl. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I feel like, nothing would shock me, but now that they are back on the field and everything, you kind of had your week to make a decision. Some probably have decided they're going to enter later, but I feel like we probably won't see a ton here, at least in the immediate future. In terms of the running back room, what would your thoughts be on a Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings, Jordan Marshall, Ben Hall, Cole Cabana, Tavi Dunlap backfield for next year?
I could live with it. I think there's you could, at the very least, I think they could piece something together with that. But you and I have both talked a lot about, I feel like Kalel Mullings probably should have played more this year at the expense of Donovan Edwards. Sorry, Dono. If he comes back, again, I don't feel like it's a given that if Donovan Edwards comes back, all of a sudden he's this team's bell cow. He's going to have to earn that. And this year, what we've seen a lot from him is a guy that does not run particularly well through contact. The explosiveness just hasn't quite been there. They haven't really done an awesome job of getting him the ball in the open field either. I think that's where we've seen some of his better plays come from.
I agree.
But yeah, I think they'd be fine there. I mean, if Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings are your two, I don't think you have like a lead bell cow there, but I think you can live with that. And then some of those other guys coming in, or, we know that they like Benjamin Hall a lot. We know that Cole Cabana is going to have some sort of role. Jordan Marshall is a guy that I think would play as a true freshman. So to me, it's not, I know people saw Trevor Etienne enter the portal, and Obviously, if he wanted to come to Michigan, you'd take him. But it's not a scenario where, like, if JJ McCarthy leaves, all of a sudden you're kind of, I won't say screwed at quarterback, but it looks a lot different there. I think they have guys to backfill that production and guys that will step into bigger roles at the running back spot. So I could live with it for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be solid enough. I mean, I think Donovan Edwards, as much as people are down on him right now as a runner, I mean, I think he can improve. I think an offseason that he doesn't have to deal with multiple surgeries could benefit him. And I think working under Mike Hart another year, it does wonders for anybody. I mean, he's fantastic as a running backs coach. So I'm not totally out on the idea of Donovan Edwards being a featured back, certainly at the college level. He's got to come back for that to happen. I think probably I would guess he does, but at the same time, I do think he'd get drafted, from an NFL team if he wanted to go, just because of kind of what he's shown in his versatile skill set. But I wouldn't feel too bad about that. A lot of it too would depend on what JJ does, because if JJ comes back and that's your backfield, I can really live with that. If JJ doesn't come back and you are going to want to lean more on the run game, then that's where I get a little bit more worried.
Yeah, if JJ McCarthy doesn't come back, all of a sudden it changes the conversation. But if he does, and I don't know that, and again, this is just me spitballing here. This isn't based on intel or anything, but if JJ McCarthy does come back, I do wonder if the pitch is more to showcase himself as maybe being the top quarterback off the board next year, which would mean obviously some more passing, a little more of his dual threat skill set on display. So
we'll have another offseason of 50-50 talk.
Yeah, well, we want to come out of every game with so and so with X amount of touches, and so such and such with this amount. Yeah, like we do every year, we hear that. But with JJ McCarthy, I think that he's by far the biggest piece to all of this, because I think that's going to that might inform on the other side of the ball. Maybe that's what informs Junior Colson or a guy like guys like him or Rod Moore to come back, because JJ's coming back, and you're going to have the most important weapon you need to make another run at this thing, whatever the result winds up being this year. So to me, with the running backs, I think if you just take what they have now, exit Blake Corum, enter Jordan Marshall, I think that they can find a way to piece that together. And I think that they would find a way to make it work. I have some questions about the offensive line still. We'll see if they wind up making any additions there, but yeah, I think that they'd be fine. They'll be fine at running back. I even if Donovan Edwards leaves, I think that they'd be fine at running back. So we'll see what happens.
Do you agree with this statement? If JJ McCarthy comes back to Michigan, Donovan Edwards comes back to Michigan.
Yes.
I think that's probably true, just based on their relationship and the appeal of playing with guys like that on either side. I think that's probably the case. I did just pull up the numbers here from PFF. They are more 50-50 than people think. This is when JJ McCarthy's in the game, 322 passes compared to 382 runs. Again, this is a team that's 13-0 and has won every game, or almost every game, pretty convincingly. That compares to last year, 385 passes. This is through 14 games, including one against TCU where they threw a ton, compared to 476 runs. So quite a bit more run heavy a year ago. Makes a lot of sense considering you had a first-year starting quarterback, and Blake Corum, as just a guy who you could really rely on and you hand the ball to a ton. But they have been a little bit more balanced than I think people want to give them credit for, even though I do think they could be still a little bit more creative.
Yeah, definitely need to be a little more creative. But when you look at, and again, someone in the comments will yell at me over the math, but I think that maybe worked out to maybe, because that stat was with JJ McCarthy in the game, right?
That's correct.
This year?
Yep.
So if my math is correct, that's maybe 5 more runs than passes per game. I don't know. That's just the loose, quick math there. That's not crazy at all. Especially we know at its core, this Michigan offense wants to control the line of scrimmage, and they do want to hammer the ball a little bit. But yeah, given what they have, I mean, given everything, I think that's I think they've been fairly balanced. Some people mistake like the amount of plays and the amount of production as what truly constitutes 50-50. But from a play calling perspective, I think that they've done a pretty good job this year of just moving the ball by whatever it takes. And every game, some games have looked different than others, but yeah, they've done a fine job there, I think, overall.
And he's also been banged up a little bit too. I think that's worth noting, especially when you look at, because we were singing a little bit of a different tune a few weeks ago before these last few games about the offense and its aggression and everything. But I do think some injuries played a part in that.